chosen one. Stop for a moment and listen. Really listen. Something in your spirit has been stirring. A whisper too consistent to be coincidence. You've tried to dismiss it as imagination, yet it returns again and again. God has revealed the one destined to walk beside you. It began quietly, like the faint hum of a violin before an orchestra rises. Maybe it was a dream that felt too vivid to forget. Maybe it was a peace that descended after prayer, so deep it silenced your anxiety. Or maybe, as you scrolled through the noise of the world, this message found you right when your heart cried, "Lord, show me if they're the one." That's not chance. That's heaven's timing. The Word of God declares in the book of Psalms, chapter 37, verse 4, "Delight yourself in the Lord, and He shall give you the desires of your heart." Do you feel that? Chosen one? This isn't about chasing desire, it's about alignment. When your delight is anchored in Him, your desires transform into reflections of His will. You stop asking for what pleases you and begin yearning for what pleases Him. And that's when heaven begins to unveil the mystery of who He has prepared for you. I remember one chosen one named Mara, a woman of quiet strength. For years, she prayed for clarity about love. She thought silence meant denial, but the silence was actually preparation. One evening, while she read her worn Bible under the glow of a single candle, she heard within her spirit, "He is not coming to fix you, He will meet you whole." That night, she stopped begging and started becoming. Months later, as she served at her local shelter, a stranger joined her on the same volunteer shift. When their eyes met, peace, not fireworks, confirmed what prayer had already whispered. That's how heaven works. Not through drama, but through divine rhythm. Sometimes, it's the sound of two heartbeats that have been tuned to the same frequency by God Himself. You, too, are in that divine rhythm now. The signs around you are not random. You've been sensing their presence before seeing their face. Every repeated number, every phrase that echoes twice, every song that stirs tears for no reason. It's the Spirit's way of saying, pay attention. Heaven is moving. Imagine this, a single drop of water landing on a still pond. The ripples expand outward, reaching edges unseen. That's what happens when heaven speaks about your destiny. It doesn't just affect your emotions, it ripples into your timeline. God is already preparing two paths to meet, and He's removing obstacles you can't even see. But here's what many forget. Revelation is responsibility. When God whispers the identity of your future spouse, it's not so you'll idolize them, but so you'll intercede for them. The moment you know, you are called to cover them in prayer. Somewhere, that person might be battling doubt, temptation, or delay, and your obedience becomes their shield. That's what divine love looks like before it's visible. Prayer, not pursuit. You are not waiting for someone to complete you. You are waiting for someone to collaborate with you. Together, you will become a reflection of heaven's covenant, a living sermon of what grace and purpose can create when two souls say yes to God first. Right now, you may feel like a seed buried beneath layers of dirt, wondering if God forgot where He planted you. But hidden seasons are not forgotten seasons. In the dark soil of patience, destiny grows roots. And when the time is right, heaven doesn't need to announce it with thunder. The door will simply open. and peace will walk through, wearing a familiar smile. Chosen one, you are not behind. You are in divine process. Heaven is too intentional to be late. The person meant for you is not missing, they are being molded. God is not delaying love, He is perfecting it. Let your heart breathe. Let your faith rest. When you stop striving, revelation has room to speak. For some, this message is confirmation. For others, it is the gentle knock of awakening. Either way, the Lord has set something in motion today. If this message speaks to your spirit, take a breath, and when you're ready, like, share, and subscribe so you don't miss what heaven wants to reveal next. Now, as a prophetic act of faith, type the number 777 inches, the comments. Let that number be your silent yes to heaven's whisper. Heaven sees your number as agreement, not superstition. Every 777 becomes a spark rising toward the throne, a signal that you are ready, waiting, and willing to walk in divine timing. The revelation has settled in your spirit now. You no longer question whether God has spoken. You're learning how to recognize His voice among the noise. Confirmation does not always come wrapped in miracles or angelic visions. Often, it comes quietly, tucked within the rhythm of your days. You start noticing patterns. The same scripture keeps surfacing. The same name crosses your path unexpectedly. Dreams feel layered, carrying symbols you can't ignore. Yet even with all these hints, your heart hesitates because believing something unseen requires courage. According to what is revealed in the book of Proverbs, chapter 3, verse 6, in all your ways, acknowledge Him, and He shall direct your paths. This is the secret of confirmation. It's not about chasing proof, but about staying aligned. When your steps honor God, He ensures that every sign points toward truth and not distraction. There was once a chosen one named Eliar, a man who had surrendered his desire for marriage to God after years of disappointment. He decided he would focus only on his purpose and trust that love would find him when the time was right. But the confirmations began before he expected. He dreamt of standing in a golden field, sunlight on his shoulders, and a figure approaching from afar. Each time he prayed for understanding, a verse about covenant would appear in his reading plan. Then, during a ministry conference, he met someone whose presence felt like déjà vu. He didn't rush. He simply kept walking with peace. Months later, both discovered they had prayed the same prayer on the same night. That was the confirmation, not emotion. But divine symétrie. You may be walking through your own version of that field. God is revealing fragments, not the full picture. The details are deliberate. He wants you to trust, not analyze. The reason He speaks in whispers is to draw you closer. He hides meaning within moments so that revelation becomes relationship. Think of it like a lighthouse on a foggy coast. The beam does not light the entire ocean. It flashes rhythmically, guiding the sailor one glimpse at a time. The Spirit does the same with your heart. Flashes of recognition, waves of peace, quiet nudges toward destiny. When confirmation comes, it brings stillness, not confusion. And yes, there will be imitations, counterfeit signals crafted to mimic God's timing. But discernment grows in stillness. The voice of heaven never rushes you, it roots you. When you feel pressured, That's not confirmation, it's counterfeit urgency. There's something sacred about divine timing. A sign may repeat until you finally pause to notice. It's like God writing your story in invisible ink, revealed only under the light of surrender. The same numbers you see, the same verse that keeps resurfacing, the same person who suddenly appears in conversation again and again. None of it is random. Heaven is fluent in patterns. Maybe you've sensed the same fragrance whenever you pray about them. Maybe your spirit feels peace, not fireworks, when you think of their name. Maybe it's been appearing in dreams that feel more like prophecy than imagination. Each of those is heaven's handwriting, and confirmation often feels ordinary until hindsight reveals its beauty. There's a story whispered in every sign, a narrative that heaven writes long before you see the ending. If you are watching closely, you'll find divine fingerprints on the smallest details. A phone call at the perfect time, a verse underlined years ago, suddenly glowing with relevance, an old wound finally healed so that love has room to land. And yet, the truest confirmation always happens within you. It's when peace settles like dew on your heart. No striving, no overthinking, just peace that surpasses understanding. That peace becomes your compass. It won't shout, but it will stay. Chosen one, you are learning to read heaven's language. Every sign you recognize strengthens your faith muscle. It's no longer about seeking proof, it's about recognizing presence. When God confirms something, He never contradicts His own word. The revelation of your future spouse will harmonize with His character, His timing, and His peace. You don't need to ask for 10 more signs. Instead, thank Him for the clarity you already have. Let gratitude replace anxiety. The same God who began this revelation will confirm it through consistency, not confusion. As you move through your days, remember, God does not tease His children. When He reveals, He intends to fulfill. You can rest in that assurance. What's meant for you cannot be stolen, delayed, or misunderstood when your heart stays aligned with His. So breathe, walk faithfully, and let confirmation unfold in His rhythm. Heaven is still speaking. Listen between the lines of your life, and you will hear the echo of destiny guiding you forward. The waiting season is not punishment, it's preparation. You stand between revelation and manifestation, learning that time itself is a tool in God's hand. When the promise is delayed, heaven is not silent, it is strategic. You might not see the full picture yet, but God is shaping your heart so that when love comes, it won't become an idol. Waiting exposes motives. It reveals whether you desire marriage for purpose or for validation, and that refining, though painful, is the evidence of your maturity. We are reminded through the writings of David in the book of Psalms, chapter 27, verse 14, "Wait for the Lord, be strong, and take heart, and wait for the Lord." Oh, the verse doesn't say, if the Lord comes through, it says wait for Him, because He will. There was a chosen one named Noah, whose story reflected the ache of waiting. She had received a word years earlier that her partner would be someone who carried the same spiritual assignment. For a long time, that word felt like both comfort and curse. Everyone around her was marrying, building families, while she remained in the in-between. One evening, while crying out in prayer, she whispered, "God, I'm tired of waiting." "Oh," and He answered, "Not in thunder, But in peace, you are not waiting for love, you are becoming love. Oh, from that night, Noah's waiting transformed. She began to write letters to her future spouse, not to cling, but to prepare. Letters filled with prayers, lessons, gratitude. Each one became a stone in the altar of her becoming. Years later, when she finally met the one God had promised, the first thing he said was, "I feel like I've known your heart forever." And she smiled, because in prayer, he already had. Waiting is a classroom for warriors of faith. Every delay refines your discernment. Every unanswered question stretches your trust. God uses waiting to train your heart for covenant, not comfort. Think of an archer preparing for battle. The bowstring must be pulled back before the arrow flies forward. The tension you feel now isn't failure. It's the stretch before release. God is positioning you for precision. In this season, do not despise slowness. Heaven's pace is perfect. You are learning what it means to walk in rhythm with God's heartbeat. If He rushed the process, you would meet the right person at the wrong time, and timing is what transforms connection into covenant. There will be moments when loneliness whispers that God forgot your name. There will be nights when your faith feels like ashes. But even ashes can birth beauty when laid on the altar. Every tear you shed in faith waters the seed of promise. Heaven counts them. The waiting season also reveals what still needs healing. Old disappointments rise. Insecurities resurface. Wounds you thought were gone suddenly ache again. Don't hide them, offer them. Healing is the bridge between revelation and fulfillment. What you surrender now, you won't have to fight later. And remember, waiting is not standing still. It's walking steadily without sight. It's serving, creating, learning, growing. It's loving people better, deepening intimacy with God, and preparing to become the kind of partner you've been praying for. This season is your training ground. You are learning how to stay faithful without results, how to keep believing without evidence. Every prayer uttered in this space becomes a blueprint for your future home. So, when doubt tries to mock your patience, answer it with faith. My waiting is not wasted. Because when God finally brings that person into your path, you'll recognize them not by how they look, but by how your spirit finally exhales. The waiting will make sense. Then it will have shaped you into someone ready to love without fear. The unseen work will become visible fruit. You'll realize that heaven was never late. It was waiting for you to grow into the promise. Now, as a quiet act of trust, write in the comments, "I'm in the becoming." And those 4 words are not just a phrase, they are a declaration that your waiting has purpose. You're not stagnant, you're transforming. Every time someone reads those words, they'll be reminded that becoming is the most sacred form of waiting, because it means you're preparing your heart for the promise that's already on its way. Each moment, you choose patience over panic. Heaven takes notice. The waiting becomes worship, and your endurance turns into incense that rises before God, proof that faith still lives even in silence. And when the promise arrives, you'll see that every slow day was holy training. Every unanswered prayer was a rehearsal for fulfillment. You were not waiting for love, you were waiting into it. The enemy fears revelation, but he dreads discernment even more. When you begin to recognize what is from God and what is merely disguised as divine, you become unshakable. Every chosen one must face a season where the counterfeit appears before the true promise. It's not punishment, it's a test of sight. You've prayed, you've waited, and suddenly someone appears who seems to fit every description. They speak of faith. They mirror your dreams. They even mention destiny. Your heart stirs. But deep inside, something feels slightly off. It's not confusion, it's caution. The Spirit is whispering. Look deeper. That no. According to the second letter to the Corinthians, chapter 11, verse 14, and no wonder, for Satan himself masquerades as an angel of light. That no. That's why discernment is your armor. Not every open door is divine. Some are distractions dressed as opportunities. Counterfeits often arrive when your faith is tired and your heart is hungry. They mimic what you've been praying for, but lack the fragrance of peace. God's promises come with stillness. The enemy's imitations come with pressure. There was once a chosen one named Leor, whose story became a lesson in discernment. He had received revelation that his future spouse would carry a voice of intercession, a partner who prayed with authority. Months later, he met someone whose words were drenched in scripture, whose charm felt heaven-touched. Everyone said, "She's the one," yet every time he prayed, his spirit felt a subtle heaviness. He ignored it at first, convincing himself that doubt was fear. But one night, he dreamed of walking through a field filled with mirrors. Some reflected his face clearly, others warped his image. When he awoke, the Lord spoke softly, "Discern between reflection and imitation." The next time he met her, he noticed the difference. Her words carried beauty, but not truth. Her prayers sounded powerful, but lacked surrender. Peace had left the room, and that was all the confirmation he needed. He let go, and though it hurt, clarity followed. Like sunrise after storm, discernment is not suspicion. It's sight guided by spirit. It teaches you to listen beyond charm, beyond similarity, beyond emotion. The counterfeit will echo what you desire. The divine will confirm what you need. The counterfeit demands constant reassurance. The divine brings quiet confidence. Imagine standing in a marketplace of lights, every lantern glowing in gold. To the untrained eye, all seem the same, but one light burns with pure flame, while the rest flicker artificially. That's what discernment reveals. It separates the eternal from the temporary. The counterfeit will often appear first. It is the enemy's attempt to plant doubt before the real thing arrives. He wants you to settle early, to trade destiny for distraction. But if you wait long enough, the imitation always exposes itself. Time is truth's best ally. This is why your spiritual senses must stay sharpened. Fasting, prayer, and silence are not rituals, they're calibration. They tune your inner ear to heaven's frequency, so that when deception speaks, your spirit instantly detects the discord. You will know the difference by the fruit. The right connection leads you closer to purpose. The wrong one drains it. The right one ignites peace. The wrong one amplifies confusion. The right one aligns with God's word. The wrong one twists it subtly, like poison diluted in honey. Sometimes the counterfeit is not a person, but an idea, a fantasy of how love should look, built on emotion instead of obedience. You begin to chase the feeling rather than the function. But God is calling you to discern beyond attraction, beyond timing, beyond fear. The Spirit of God will never confuse you. His direction may challenge you, but it will never contradict peace. When the wrong door opens, you'll feel the strain in your spirit. When the right one does, peace will settle like morning light on still water. Discernment grows in relationship with God, not in suspicion toward people. You don't need to test others. You need to stay aligned. When your heart remains near the shepherd, wolves cannot deceive you for long. Remember, the enemy imitates patterns, but he cannot sustain presence. What is false will eventually crumble under the weight of time, while what is true will endure every storm. So, chosen one, guard your spirit without closing your heart. Don't fear deception, simply stay rooted in truth. The God who revealed your promise will also protect it. You will not miss what is yours, and you will not be fooled by what is not. The counterfeit always comes to teach discernment, not to destroy destiny. What you learn here becomes the foundation of your wisdom. When the real covenant appears, you'll recognize it instantly, not because it looks perfect, but because it carries peace. The time of alignment begins quietly. It does not arrive with trumpet sounds or bright signs in the sky. It unfolds like dawn, slowly coloring the edges of your world. You begin to notice how everything is falling into rhythm. People who once drained your energy fade away. Your heart starts beating in time with heaven's pulse. What once felt scattered now begins to make sense. Heaven has begun its orchestration. Every delay, every closed door, every strange turn has been part of divine choreography. God has been arranging the meeting point, preparing you and your future spouse for a moment when everything aligns: spirit, purpose, and timing. We are reminded through the words written in the book of Romans, chapter 8, verse 28. And we know that in all things God works for the good of those who love him, who have been called according to his purpose. Lane, that verse is not theory, it's the rhythm of alignment itself. Nothing you have walked through has been wasted. Every heartbreak was a recalibration. Every loneliness, a season of refinement. Every unanswered prayer, a redirection towards something better than what you thought you wanted. I remember a chosen one named Seren, who felt as though life had forgotten her. Each year, she watched others step into love, while her own path remained still. But one day, during prayer, God showed her a vision. Two rivers, far apart, flowing through different valleys. At first they seemed separate forever, but eventually both reached a place where their currents met and became one powerful stream. That's when she understood the waiting was not punishment, it was positioning. Months later, she met someone whose spirit carried the same peace that had filled her prayers. Their meeting wasn't dramatic, it was quiet, like two melodies finding the same key. She looked back and realized, if they had met earlier, they would have broken each other. But now, after all that shaping, they were ready to build together. That's what divine alignment looks like, timing that feels inevitable. And you, too, are standing at that intersection where obedience meets fulfillment. The calendar of heaven is about to turn a page with your name on it. You are not chasing love. Love is catching up to your obedience. When heaven aligns your steps, you begin to move with peace instead of panic. You no longer try to force what's not meant for you. You walk differently, steady, grounded, confident, not because you know what's coming, but because you trust who's guiding. Imagine a great painter working on a masterpiece. From your viewpoint, the brushstrokes may seem random splashes of color without pattern. but step back, and you'll see the image forming. That's what God has been doing. You're the canvas, and He's been layering depth, light, and contrast. Alignment is simply the moment the picture becomes clear. Now, while you listen, pause and breathe. Feel that quiet assurance deep in your spirit. Everything is coming together. Even what once felt like a detour was part of the design. The right person, the right place, the right time, they're converging right now, even in unseen spaces. And as this message finds you, if it has spoken peace into your process, let it plant something good in return. If you've felt fed, uplifted, or seen, consider helping this light continue to reach others, not out of pressure, but out of gratitude. Imagine a garden of light, each listener a lantern glowing softly in the night. When one adds oil, the flame travels farther. It finds another wandering soul in the dark. That's what happens when you choose to keep the flame alive. You can. Like this message, it's like adding a spark to the constellation so others can find their way. You can share it, letting the river of truth carry this light downstream to someone praying for a sign. You can subscribe, staying connected to the heartbeat of heaven as new words are released. And if your heart feels led to donate, see it not as payment, but as planting. Each offering is a seed in the soil of purpose, growing into comforted voices, awakened souls, and restored hearts. Like a glowing lantern lifted into the night sky, your gift lets hope travel farther than either of us could reach alone. Alignment isn't only about relationships, it's about harmony in every area of life. When you align your giving, serving, and believing, you create balance between what you receive and what you release. So as you stand here, on the edge of fulfillment, know this: heaven wastes nothing. Every season is weaving together for your good. Trust the process. Keep your heart pure, and stay open to divine timing, because the same God who aligned stars to mark the birth of kings is aligning every detail of your life right now. Soon, when your paths finally cross, you'll understand why every detour was worth it. There is a kind of waiting that looks still on the outside, but moves mountains within the spirit. You are living in that kind of season now, the sacred pause between revelation and fulfillment. Heaven calls it the holy silence before the song begins. You've learned to trust God with what you cannot control. Yet sometimes, when the nights stretch long and prayers echo without reply, your heart whispers, "Did I hear wrong?" But no, God hasn't changed His mind. He's testing your posture. Waiting isn't about delay, it's about direction. He's teaching you how to wait well, according to what is spoken in the book of James, chapter 1, verse 4. Let patience have its perfect work, that you may be perfect and complete, lacking nothing. Oh, that's what this season is doing. It's completing you. God isn't punishing you with time, He's polishing you with patience. There was once a chosen one named Eden, who waited 8 years for the fulfillment of a promise. Every year seemed like an unanswered prayer, but what she didn't see was how God was reshaping her heart in the waiting. Her pride was being stripped away, her faith deepened, her joy purified. When she finally met the person God had chosen for her, it wasn't just that they were ready, it was that her spirit had learned to rest before love ever arrived. That's the quiet miracle of waiting well. The world calls it delay, Heaven calls it development. Think of a seed buried deep in soil. It's surrounded by darkness, pressed by weight, and watered by what feels like tears. Yet beneath that pressure, life begins to unfold. Roots form before blossoms appear. You are that seed. And God is guarding your growth from premature exposure. The promise must take root before it can rise. To wait well is to worship while you wait. It's to say, Lord, I trust you even when the picture isn't painted yet. Each act of surrender becomes another brushstroke of divine artistry. When you learn to rest in His timing, anxiety loses its grip. You begin to feel peace in places that once felt empty. The silence no longer scares you, it soothes you. Because silence from God doesn't mean absence, it often means intimacy. He speaks most clearly in stillness. You'll know you're learning to wait well when you stop asking, when will it happen? And start saying, God, shape me until it does. Eden used to walk through gardens each morning, whispering, I'm still here, Lord. One day, she felt Him whisper back, I never left. That's the essence of waiting. Well, not the absence of progress, but the presence of peace. And you, chosen one, are walking through that same transformation. Your spirit is being refined, your patience perfected, your faith anchored. You may not see the timeline, but heaven does. God is not late, He's precise. Every divine promise carries a birth date. And when that moment arrives, not even a storm can stop it. Imagine an artist waiting for the sunrise to paint a mountain. They don't rush the dawn, they wait for the light. Because the light defines the color, you, too, must wait for the right light, the right season. When it comes, every hidden hue of your story will finally make sense. There is no wasted waiting when your heart stays surrendered. Every day of obedience builds the strength you'll need when the promise finally stands before you. So breathe, stay faithful, keep your lamp burning. The waiting is not empty, it's holy ground beneath your feet. And when you reach the end of this chapter, you'll realize you didn't just wait for love, you became the kind of love heaven trusts. Now, if this word has met you in the quiet corners of your waiting, pause for a moment and acknowledge it. As a prophetic act of faith, comment the number 555 below, not for superstition, but as a symbol 3 5s, the number of grace multiplied. It declares, I am covered by grace as I wait. And 4. Every 555 becomes a whisper of surrender, a small light rising in the darkness, saying, I trust the process. I trust His timing. I will wait well. And 4. Each number typed is not just digital ink, it's a declaration in the spirit. Heaven reads faith differently than men do. It counts belief as movement. When you comment 555, it's as if you're lighting a small torch that says, even here, even now, I still believe. And as those torches multiply, heaven sees a field of light, souls learning to wait without fear, hearts learning to hope again. You are not waiting alone. You are waiting among the chosen who dare to trust grace more than time. Night has a strange way of speaking truth to the soul. It quiets everything unnecessary, leaving only what is real. And in that stillness, God often sends visions, glimpses of what is to come, pictures that bypass the logic of your waking mind. These are not mere dreams. They are prophetic whispers. They come as symbols, fragments of revelation, messages clothed in mystery. According to what is written in the book of Joel, chapter 2, verse 28, "And it shall come to pass afterward, that I will pour out my spirit upon all flesh. Your sons and your daughters shall prophesy. Your old men shall dream dreams. Your young men shall see visions." And dreams have always been one of heaven's most intimate languages. They bypass pride, fear, and distraction, speaking directly to the core of who you are. When you sleep, your defenses fall, and your spirit becomes receptive. Sometimes the message is clear, a face, a phrase, a moment that glows with divine light. Other times it's layered with symbols that must be discerned over time. There was once a chosen one named Aram, a man whose faith was steady, but whose heart often wrestled with uncertainty. For months, he had prayed for confirmation about the one God had promised him. One night, he dreamt of walking through a vineyard. Every vine was filled with fruit, except for one in the center, still green and untouched. As he approached, he felt peace wash over him, as if the vine itself was breathing. When he woke, the image lingered like fragrance. Days later, while studying scripture, his eyes fell upon the words, "In due season, they shall reap if they faint not." That's when he understood the dream wasn't about who, but when. Prophetic dreams rarely tell you everything. They don't satisfy curiosity. They cultivate trust. God uses them to draw you closer, not to give you control. The moment you try to decode everything too quickly, the mystery fades. But if you sit in stillness, the Spirit begins to reveal meaning layer by layer, like light dawning on a foggy morning. Some dreams are meant for understanding, others are meant for intercession. You might dream of your future spouse, not to idolize them, but to pray for them. Perhaps you see them walking through a storm, or surrounded by confusion. That's not fantasy, it's instruction. Heaven is showing you where to send your prayers. You become a silent guardian of someone you have not yet met. Prophetic dreams also expose what needs healing within you. Sometimes the image of a closed door or a shattered mirror is heaven's way of saying, "Forgive," or "Let go." God heals you through the language of symbols, because images can reach places words cannot. You may dream of water, a river, an ocean, or rain. Water often represents cleansing, renewal, or emotional healing. You may dream of light breaking through darkness. That's revelation pushing through doubt. You may dream of gardens or gates. That's God inviting you into new seasons of growth. The key is not to force meaning, but to stay sensitive. When you wake, write it down. Even the details that seem insignificant, a color, a number, a word may carry weight later. Sometimes a dream today connects with a moment years ahead. Heaven doesn't forget what it reveals. It simply waits for the right time to unveil its purpose. Dreams are like divine postcards sent from your future, carrying messages you'll understand only when you arrive there. They're proof that heaven has already visited your tomorrow. But remember, not every dream is prophetic. Some are the overflow of thought, others shaped by emotion. True prophetic dreams carry peace. They linger not as confusion, but as clarity wrapped in mystery. When you wake, they don't fade with fear, they stay with gentleness. You may not always understand immediately, and that's okay. God isn't testing your intellect, He's training your discernment. Learning to listen is part of your growth as a chosen one. Each dream becomes a stepping stone toward deeper intimacy with Him. Sometimes, a prophetic dream arrives right before a breakthrough, like a dawn before sunrise. It's heaven's way of saying, "Hold on, you're closer than you think." No. And perhaps tonight, as you close your eyes, you'll sense that same gentle presence resting over you. The world will fade. Your breathing will slow, and the Spirit will whisper through images, through colors, through stillness. "I am still writing your story." No. So, rest. Chosen one, rest without fear. You are not dreaming alone. Heaven watches. Heaven speaks. Heaven reveals. And one day, when what you have dreamt finally stands before you, you'll understand that every vision was never just a glimpse of the future, but a promise sealed in grace. There comes a moment when revelation demands reflection. Before God brings the promise into sight, He holds up a mirror, not the kind that flatters, but the kind that reveals. The season of healing begins when you stop asking, "When will they come?" and start asking, "Am I whole enough to receive what's coming?" The Word of God declares in the book of Hosea, chapter 6, verse 1, "Come, let us return to the Lord, for He has torn us, that He may heal us. He has struck us down, and He will bind us up." Healing, in heaven's language, is not punishment, it's preparation. The same hand that allows breaking also offers binding. The Lord never wounds to harm, He wounds to heal. Sometimes, He must expose what's hidden beneath layers of pride, fear, or disappointment before love can safely dwell there. There was a chosen one named Lyra, whose heart was like a fortress. Years of betrayal had taught her to keep her emotions guarded behind walls of logic and control. When God whispered that He was preparing her for a divine union, she laughed in disbelief. "I can't even trust. Lord," she confessed. And that's when the real work began. In her prayers, memories surfaced, childhood wounds, unspoken words, moments she had buried and forgotten. It wasn't the devil bringing them up, it was the healer calling her to open the door. One by one, she surrendered them. She forgave faces that no longer appeared in her life, released expectations she didn't realize she was still holding, and slowly, the fortress became a garden. That is how God heals subtly, gently, yet thoroughly. He doesn't always fix pain by removing it. Sometimes, He transforms it into wisdom. What once felt like a scar becomes a scripture written on your soul, a verse that will later comfort someone else. Healing is holy work. It asks you to sit with memories you would rather forget and listen until they stop bleeding. It asks you to look at yourself through mercy instead of shame. It asks you to stop pretending you're over it and actually let grace finish the surgery. You cannot step into covenant carrying open wounds. Love is meant to be shared, not used as a bandage. God doesn't want you to depend on another person to feel whole. He wants two healed souls to meet, not two broken ones trying to fix each other. Healing is not a straight path. Some days you'll feel peace. Other days, grief will knock again. That's all right. Healing happens in layers, just like forgiveness. The heart needs time to learn that it's safe again. Imagine a potter repairing a cracked vessel. He doesn't discard it. He fills the fractures with liquid gold, making it even more valuable than before. That's what God does with your pain. Every fracture becomes a place for glory to shine through. The light doesn't hide the break. It transforms it into beauty. Sometimes, the person God is preparing for you is also healing at the same time. You're both in different corners of the workshop, being reshaped by the same hands. When the process is complete, you won't recognize the old versions of yourselves. You'll meet not as two survivors of pain, but as two testaments of restoration. Healing also changes how you love. It replaces fear with gentleness, insecurity with empathy, defensiveness with grace. The healed heart doesn't demand, it gives. It doesn't control, it invites. It doesn't rush, it rests. That kind of love reflects heaven. And perhaps that's why healing takes time, because God is rewriting your definition of love. You thought it was romance, but He's teaching you it's resurrection. Lyra once said after her journey, "Healing didn't make me softer, it made me sacred." That's the kind of wholeness God wants for you. The kind that no longer reacts from pain, but responds from peace. So if you're in a season where God keeps pressing on old wounds, don't pull away. The pain is not proof of His absence, it's proof of His attention. He's saying, "This part matters to me too." Oh, and when He's finished, you'll look at yourself and realize the reflection has changed. The same eyes that once carried sorrow will now carry light. The same heart that once feared love will finally feel safe in it. For healing isn't just a step toward your promise, it's the soil that allows it to grow. And when love finally arrives, it will not be a rescue, but a reflection of how far grace has brought you. Even after revelation, confirmation, and healing, there comes another storm, the storm of doubt. You thought peace would be permanent once you surrendered. But even peace gets tested. The enemy doesn't fear your promise, he fears your perseverance. If he can't steal what God gave you, he'll try to make you question it. Doubt doesn't shout, it whispers. It asks, "Did you really hear God?" It points to the silence and calls it proof that you're forgotten. But silence is not absence, it's strategy. God hides you in stillness, not to punish you, but to protect what's forming. The ancient words recorded in the book of Hebrews, chapter 10, verse 35 say, "So do not throw away your confidence, it will be richly rewarded." Confidence is faith dressed in patience. It's the quiet courage to keep believing when your emotions have stopped cheering. There was once a chosen one named Micah, a man of deep conviction but fragile confidence. After years of believing that God had revealed his future spouse, nothing seemed to move. He prayed, fasted, and served faithfully. Yet heaven appeared still. That's when doubt came gentle, logical, disguised as reason. Maybe I heard wrong. Maybe I imagined it. But one night, while walking along a lonely path near a lake, he saw something strange. A small boat anchored near the shore, swaying with the waves, yet never drifting away. He realized that was his faith. It was being rocked, not removed. The anchor was still holding. That night changed everything. Micah stopped trying to fight the storm and began to trust the anchor. He didn't need to see progress to believe. He just needed to stay grounded. You may be in that same place now, where logic argues louder than faith. But remember, Even Abraham doubted before the promise came to pass. Even Peter questioned before the miracle unfolded. Doubt doesn't disqualify you. It simply invites you to look deeper. Faith doesn't mean never questioning. It means choosing trust when answers don't come. It's standing in a dark room, holding a key you can't yet see the door for, but knowing the door exists because the key does. There's a certain strength that only waiting can teach. It's the muscle built in the middle of uncertainty. Every unanswered prayer becomes a weight that shapes your faith. And when the answer finally arrives, you'll realize that the delay didn't destroy you, it defined you. Doubt is loudest right before breakthrough. It's the final test before manifestation. It's as if the enemy knows the trumpet of fulfillment is about to sound. So he tries to distract you with questions. Don't entertain them, just keep standing. Think of a candle burning in wind. The flame bends, flickers, even dims. But it doesn't die. Why? Because its fire doesn't depend on the wind. It depends on its source. Your faith is the same. It's not fragile. It's fueled by grace. When you feel yourself wavering, go back to the last thing God told you and stay there. His instructions don't expire with time. If he said wait, keep waiting. If he said prepare, keep preparing. His word is as steady now as when you first heard it. There's a moment, often right before the fulfillment, when everything inside you feels still like standing in the eye of a storm. That's not confusion, it's transition. Heaven is rearranging things behind the veil. The promise is approaching, even if your emotions haven't caught up yet. Micah later said, "I realized faith is not about what I can prove, it's about who I still believe." And that became his peace. The waiting no longer felt like emptiness. It became evidence that the promise was worth protecting. Chosen one. You are closer than you think. The very doubt that tried to break you is proof that something powerful is about to bloom. The silence you're in is not the end of your story. It's the space before the next sentence begins. Now, as a mark of faith, leave a comment below. Still I trust. 1. Those 3 words may look simple, but they carry power. When you write them, you're declaring that doubt will not have the last word. You're reminding heaven and yourself that even when sight fails, trust remains. Because when faith refuses to quit, miracles lose their choice. Each time you type, "Still I trust," heaven hears it as more than words, it's worship. Trust is the language angels understand. It's faith without decoration, belief without evidence, love without demand. And in that posture, your spirit becomes a lighthouse in the fog. You stop needing clarity to keep shining. Trust itself becomes your direction, and heaven begins to move. When destiny finally moves, it doesn't always come with lightning and applause. Sometimes it begins with something ordinary, a passing glance, a quiet conversation, a peace that feels ancient. The appointed encounter rarely looks like a movie scene. It looks like divine timing hidden inside simplicity. Heaven never wastes introductions. The moment God decides that 2 paths should meet, every detail carries purpose, time, place. Even the silence between words. You don't need to chase the moment. It's already chasing you. As written in the book of Ecclesiastes, chapter 3, verse 11, He has made everything beautiful in its time. Beauty in timing is what separates coincidence from calling. When the right meeting happens, Something inside you will recognize home. There won't be fireworks, just peace. The kind that hums quietly in your chest. There was once a chosen one named Elias, who had nearly given up on the idea of divine appointment. He'd prayed for years and thought maybe he had misheard heaven. Then, one ordinary afternoon, while helping at a community center, he met someone while sorting food boxes. Their conversation was simple about weather, about kindness, about life, but afterward, he couldn't shake the calm that lingered. He didn't feel infatuation, he felt recognition. That's how destiny feels, not overwhelming, but familiar. For weeks, he didn't rush. He prayed, he waited, and slowly, God began to confirm it, not through signs in the sky, but through inner stillness. That's the secret. When it's from God, peace becomes louder than excitement. Every divine encounter is a bridge. It carries you from waiting into walking. And just like any bridge, it's built long before you ever step onto it. You didn't find it by luck. You were led there by obedience. Think of your life like a great tapestry. For years, all you've seen are loose threads, disappointments, delays, unexpected turns. But now, as heaven turns the fabric over, you begin to see the design, the faces, the places, the prayers. They all connect into something breathtaking. Sometimes, when two souls meet, the moment feels too gentle to notice, but heaven notices. Angels record what looks like an accident and label it appointment. The right meeting will never demand you to lose yourself. It will remind you who you are. And when that day comes, when you stand before the person who feels like a long-lost echo of your spirit, you'll know that every tear, every prayer, every lonely night was worth it. God doesn't just send you someone to love, He sends you someone to build with. Elias said later, "It wasn't a spark that told me she was the one, it was peace." Peace felt like a language we both already spoke. That's what the divine encounter does. It doesn't start chaos, it ends it. Now, if this message has met you in a moment of quiet recognition, take a breath. Let that peace settle. What you're feeling isn't imagination, it's preparation. Heaven is aligning introductions even now. And if these words have reminded you that divine timing is still real, that God still writes love stories that make sense in eternity, then you're already part of the unfolding. To help this light reach more hearts who need it, you can choose to respond in simple, gentle ways. You can. Like this message, it's like lighting one more candle in a vast cathedral, making it easier for someone lost to find their way home. You can share it, as though you're passing a cup of living water to a thirsty soul scrolling through dry screens. Let them drink hope again. You can subscribe, so you remain connected to the flow of these divine messages, just as a branch stays connected to the vine. And if you feel led, purely from the heart, to donate, think of it not as giving away something, but as planting something. Your offering is like releasing a white dove into the wind. It travels farther than you can imagine, carrying peace into places unseen. Every gift, no matter how small, becomes a heartbeat that keeps this message alive. It allows the light to keep flowing, to reach others who are one word away from giving up. There is no pressure, no demand, only invitation. Participation in what God is doing should always feel like worship, not obligation. When you choose to support this space, You're not funding a project. You're fueling a purpose. You're helping turn whispered prayers into living words that keep hearts believing. So, as you step into your own season of alignment, remember when God writes love stories. He writes them with eternity in mind. And perhaps this very message is one of the sentences in yours. Your moment of meeting is on its way, crafted by hands that never fail. And when it arrives, it will be beautiful, not because of the story itself, but because of the peace that proves heaven was always guiding the pen. Even when the appointed encounter happens, God continues his work quietly beneath the surface. Meeting the right person isn't the end of the journey, it's the beginning of refinement. The timing may have aligned, but now the testing of timing begins. Heaven never rushes covenant before promises are sealed. They are proven. You will both walk through moments that reveal whether what began in peace can withstand pressure. Divine relationships are not sustained by emotion, they are sustained by obedience. The Book of Proverbs, chapter 19, verse 21 reminds us, "Many are the plans in a person's heart, but it is the Lord's purpose that prevails." This verse becomes alive in this stage, when two lives intertwine. Each one brings its own rhythm, its own dreams, its own scars. God doesn't merge them instantly, he weaves them carefully, ensuring that purpose, not preference, becomes the center. There was a chosen one named Kyle, a man who met his promised partner after years of wilderness. The connection was undeniable, the peace profound. But soon the testing began. Time, distance, and misunderstanding pressed against their bond. Kyle confessed to God one night, "I thought this would be easy once we found each other." And heaven whispered back, "Easy never builds endurance." Love from God is not fragile, it's forged. It's tested like metal in fire, so that when the storms of life come, it doesn't bend. You don't build covenant with butterflies, you build it with brick and breath, with prayer and patience. In this season, you learn that divine timing continues, even after meeting. Just because you've found each other doesn't mean it's time to rush. God often allows delays to deepen trust, to purify motives, to align priorities. Sometimes, he pauses progress to prepare foundation. Imagine two trees planted near each other. Their branches may stretch toward one another quickly, but their roots take time to grow deep and intertwine underground. If they join too early, they'll topple when storms come. But if they wait, the shared soil will hold them steady for decades. That's what divine testing does. It strengthens roots before allowing full bloom. Kyle learned to stay steady when communication slowed and doubts rose. He chose prayer instead of panic. He stopped asking, "Why isn't this moving faster?" and began asking, "What are you teaching me here, Lord?" And slowly, he realized the delay wasn't rejection, it was reinforcement. God was teaching both of them endurance, grace, and the art of surrender. Testing isn't meant to break you. It's meant to build compatibility, not just in spirit, but in character. It exposes impatience, pride, insecurity, and fear not to shame you, but to shape you, because covenant love cannot coexist with selfishness. Think of gold being refined. It doesn't sparkle because it's heated once. It shines because it's purified repeatedly. The impurities rise. are skimmed away, and what remains is pure, unbreakable. That's what happens when two hearts surrender to God's refining fire. This is where your faith matures. You begin to understand that waiting after meeting is just as sacred as waiting before. The same patience that carried you through loneliness now carries you through learning. You realize that love isn't the goal. Becoming ready to steward love well is. Some days you'll feel distance. Other days, the connection will flow easily. But through it all, God will whisper the same truth. Be still. I'm still writing. He's not only building a relationship, he's building legacy. For many chosen ones, the test of timing feels like walking a narrow bridge, steady, careful, trusting each step. But you'll find that the same peace that led you to each other will sustain you through this season too. You are not being punished, you are being perfected. Every pause is purposeful. Every silence is strategic. Heaven is syncing two stories into one rhythm that cannot be undone by impatience or fear. Kyle later said, "The waiting after meeting was harder than the waiting before, but it made me certain this love was from God." And that's what divine testing does. It removes doubt by proving endurance. So if you find yourself in this season, don't rush to control what's unfolding. Stay consistent in prayer, anchored in peace, and gentle in expectation. Let God conduct the rhythm, because when the testing is over, what remains is unshakable, a covenant built not on emotion but on eternal purpose. And one day, when you look back, you'll see how every pause, every misunderstanding, every delay became the very thing that strengthened the foundation. The promise wasn't just fulfilled, it was fortified. The test of timing isn't meant to discourage you. It's meant to remind you that what heaven begins, it finishes. You're not waiting for love to work. You're watching God teach you how to protect what He's giving. When you finally begin to understand why the waiting and testing mattered, God opens another chapter, the revelation of covenant. It's no longer just about who you'll love. It's about why you'll love. In this sacred space, purpose becomes the foundation, and your union begins to mirror the heart of heaven. According to what is written in the book of Ephesians, chapter 5, verse 2, walk in love, as Christ also has loved us and gave himself for us, an offering and a sacrifice to God for a sweet-smelling aroma. This is where God reveals that marriage is not a prize, it's a platform. It's not an ending, it's an assignment. Every divine partnership carries a mission. Heaven doesn't unite people just to make them happy. It unites them to make them holy and useful for a greater cause. There was a chosen one named Selah, who for years prayed for her future husband. But when God finally showed her who he was, the revelation came with a deeper understanding. Their love would not be ordinary, it would carry healing for others. Together, they would build, serve, and restore families who had lost hope. Their covenant was not for comfort, but for calling. That's the truth about divine unions. They carry responsibility. God doesn't just pair two hearts, he merges two destinies. What you're stepping into is not merely romance, it's partnership with heaven. This is why the preparation was so long, because covenant requires capacity. You cannot pour into others if your own cup is cracked. God fills and seals you before he sends you. The blueprint of covenant is spiritual before it's emotional. It's about assignment before attraction. God joins you with someone who complements your purpose, not just your personality. The right person doesn't just make you feel loved, they make you more effective in your divine calling. Imagine two flames joining together. The light doesn't double, it multiplies. The warmth spreads farther, and the shadows retreat faster. That's what covenant does. It expands heaven's reach through unity. When you enter divine covenant, your love becomes a testimony. People see you and remember that grace is still possible. Your home becomes a small sanctuary. Your story, a sermon without words. Together, you'll remind others that love can be pure, strong, and God-centered. Sailor and her husband later said, "Our love didn't start when we met, it started when we both said yes to God." That's where true union begins, in surrender. And maybe, chosen one, God has been preparing you for that same revelation. The love He's writing into your life will not only satisfy your heart, it will serve His kingdom. You may already sense it. The desire to help others, the pull toward service, the stirring to create something meaningful together. That's heaven planting purpose within you, even before the partnership appears. But remember, purposeful love must remain anchored in humility. The covenant isn't about becoming famous together, it's about becoming faithful together. When love turns into ministry, pride must die so that purity can live. If God has been speaking to your spirit about your future covenant, take this as confirmation. He's not only choosing a partner for you, He's building a mission through you. You are about to become living evidence that two are indeed better than one. And when the day comes that you walk side by side with the one chosen for you, remember this moment. Remember the molding, the healing, the refining. Because every tear you cried became part of the foundation you'll stand on together. Your love will not simply exist for your joy, it will echo into generations. It will teach others how to forgive, how to endure, and how to believe again. So, if this word touches something deep inside you, if you sense that your covenant is not just about love but legacy, then let heaven see your agreement. As a prophetic act of faith, comment the number 888 below. This number symbolizes new beginnings, the cycle of completion turning into creation. When you type 888, you're declaring, "Lord, I'm ready for a love that serves your purpose." Every 888 becomes a silent trumpet in the spirit realm, signaling that another heart has aligned with divine design. Heaven takes note. Angels prepare the next chapter, and in time, you'll see the covenant written long before you knew its name come alive before your very eyes. Each 888 typed is more than a number, it's a seed of surrender. It tells heaven, my heart is open to be used, not just blessed. M2. And as those numbers rise, they form a rhythm of readiness, a symphony of souls saying yes to divine partnership. Love becomes ministry, and destiny begins to breathe. Every divine covenant draws attention, not only from heaven but from hell. The enemy doesn't attack what is ordinary, he attacks what carries impact. And few things threaten darkness more than two hearts, walking in unity under God's will. The moment purpose-driven love is born, warfare begins. You may have already felt it, the sudden confusion, the misunderstandings, the weight that seems heavier than before. Don't mistake it for coincidence. When two chosen ones come together, their light exposes what the enemy has tried to keep hidden. According to what is spoken in the book of Nehemiah, chapter 4, verse 9, "But we prayed to our God and posted a guard day and night to meet this threat." That's the pattern for victory. Pray and guard. Prayer without awareness leaves you vulnerable. Awareness without prayer leaves you powerless. Together, they build a shield that cannot be breached. There was once a couple, Nara and Ezra, whose relationship carried a prophetic assignment. Before marriage, everything seemed effortless, peace flowed, signs aligned. But after they said yes to the call, storms came suddenly. Communication faltered. Old wounds resurfaced. Even external pressures rose. Ezra began to question, did we miss God's timing? But Nara reminded him, the promise didn't die, it's just being tested. And they learned that love built on destiny will always be refined by resistance. Every misunderstanding became a chance to practice humility. Every disagreement became a lesson in grace. They stopped seeing the storm as punishment and started seeing it as training. In spiritual warfare, your response determines your result. You cannot fight darkness with frustration. You fight it with unity. Prayer becomes your strongest language. When you pray together, heaven leans closer. When you worship in agreement, strongholds begin to crumble. Imagine two soldiers standing back to back in battle. Each one guards what the other cannot see. That's what divine partnership looks like under pressure. You don't fight each other, you fight for each other. Sometimes, warfare in divine unions isn't loud, it's subtle. It might come as fatigue, distraction, or fear of loss. The enemy knows that if he can exhaust your spirit, he can dull your discernment. That's why rest, prayer, and gratitude are not luxuries, they are strategies. Remember this, what God unites, the enemy cannot destroy, but he can attempt to divide. Division begins with small seeds, unspoken offenses, pride, impatience. Heaven's defense against division is humility. When you choose understanding over ego, peace returns faster than you expect. Nara and Ezra began to establish spiritual routines. They prayed at dawn and before sleep, read scripture aloud together, and replaced arguments with worship. Slowly, the atmosphere of their home changed. What was once a battlefield became an altar. Warfare does not mean you're losing, it means you're valuable. The more significant your calling, the louder the resistance. But every time you choose peace over panic, you remind hell that its power is limited. The enemy fears love rooted in obedience because it mirrors the very heart of God. Heaven's definition of victory isn't never facing attack, it's standing after the attack. End of 20. Think of a lighthouse battered by wind and waves. Night after night, storms strike its walls, but the light never goes out. That's your love, anchored in God, illuminated by faith, unshaken by chaos. The waves don't define its strength, the endurance does. Warfare also purifies priorities. It teaches you to value prayer over comfort, patience over pride, and unity over proving who's right. You learn that love is less about being understood and more about choosing understanding. Some attacks will come not to destroy your relationship, but to deepen it. Shared battles create shared strength. The bond between Nara and Ezra grew unbreakable because they learned how to fight together, not against each other. And perhaps, chosen one, that's exactly what God is teaching you right now, to guard what He's given, to pray even when weary, to stand even when afraid. The pressure you're feeling is proof that your union carries influence. The warfare means the covenant is real. The enemy only throws stones at buildings being built when you hold fast to prayer, patience, and peace. You transform warfare into worship. You stop reacting and start reigning. The same fire meant to burn you instead forges you. In time, the storm will quiet, and you'll see how even the battles were blessings. They taught you the strength of agreement, the beauty of intercession, and the power of perseverance. Because when two chosen ones refuse to surrender, darkness runs out of strategy. What began as resistance becomes testimony, and your love story becomes a weapon of light. When the storm begins to settle, what remains is clarity. The warfare that once shook your faith begins to reveal its hidden purpose. It was never meant to destroy you, but to define you. Through every tear, every prayer, every moment of endurance, heaven has been building something immovable inside you: conviction. The prophetic confirmation that follows such seasons doesn't arrive through grand gestures. It often comes through quiet alignment. You'll notice it in conversations, in scriptures that repeat, in peace that refuses to leave. Suddenly, what once felt uncertain begins to make sense. We are reminded through the words of the prophet Habakkuk. Chapter 2, verse 3. For the vision is yet for an appointed time, though it tarry. Wait for it, because it will surely come. It will not delay. And that verse is not only about waiting, it's about trust. God's confirmations are not guesses. They are guarantees written in divine ink. When He gives a word, He watches over it until it becomes reality. There was a chosen one named Amira, who had endured years of uncertainty. God had whispered a promise about her future spouse, and though she believed, time tested that belief. She faced rejection, delay, and even seasons of silence. But one morning, while reading the Word, she came across a verse she hadn't thought about in years. The same verse that had marked her first revelation appeared again, underlined in the same color, though she couldn't remember ever marking it. In that moment, peace flooded her spirit. Heaven was reminding her, I haven't changed my mind. Prophetic confirmation rarely introduces something new. It affirms what God already said. It's the echo of His first promise returning to reassure you that His timeline is still intact. The same God who spoke the beginning still holds the ending. Sometimes confirmation arrives through people: a pastor, a friend, a stranger whose words unknowingly echo your prayer. Other times, it's a sign in nature, a sudden breeze during worship, a sunrise that feels perfectly timed. God uses creation itself to repeat His voice because all creation still listens to Him. But true confirmation never contradicts peace. If a sign brings anxiety, confusion, or haste, it's not from heaven. Divine confirmation deepens calm. It doesn't demand action. It invites rest. Think of it like a painter stepping back from his canvas. At first, the strokes seem chaotic, the colors clashing, but when he steps back, perspective brings understanding. That's what prophetic confirmation does. It allows you to see from heaven's distance, where all the brush strokes form one masterpiece. Amira began to recognize confirmations everywhere, not in superstition, but in stillness. A song playing randomly that mirrored her prayer, a phrase overheard that spoke directly to her season. And instead of overanalyzing, she started simply thanking God. That gratitude became her strength. Confirmation isn't just about reassurance, it's about preparation. Each reminder from heaven draws your spirit into alignment, readying you for what's next. The reason God confirms before completion is so you can carry peace through transition. Imagine a shepherd guiding his sheep through fog. The sheep can't see the destination, but they keep moving because they recognize the shepherd's voice. That's what prophetic confirmation does. It keeps you moving, even when the landscape isn't clear. You don't need to chase signs. Signs follow surrender. When your heart stays in alignment, heaven has no problem repeating its promises. God isn't frustrated by your need for reassurance. He's a father. And fathers love reminding their children that the plan is still on track. Sometimes, confirmation comes when you least expect it. After a long silence, you may suddenly sense peace, so overwhelming that it silences every fear. You'll realize it wasn't new information you needed. It was renewed faith. The beauty of prophetic confirmation is that it transforms endurance into evidence. What was once a prayer now feels like a preview. The same faith that kept you in waiting becomes the foundation you'll stand on when fulfillment arrives. Every whisper, every verse, every quiet assurance is God saying again, I am faithful. You won't need to force understanding. Revelation will unfold gently, naturally, like petals opening to sunlight. And when the confirmation finally becomes manifestation, you'll look back and smile not because it was easy, but because it was orchestrated with precision. You'll see how even the detours were divine, how even the silences were sacred. Prophetic confirmation is not a finale. It's heaven's way of saying, now, keep walking. The promise is near, and you'll walk with calm certainty, knowing that the same God who began this story will bring it to its perfect completion. There comes a moment when the waiting fades and fulfillment begins to rise quietly, like dawn spilling light over a sleeping city. It doesn't arrive with fanfare or noise, it arrives with peace. You feel it before you see it. The promise that once seemed distant begins to breathe beside you. This is the crowning of covenant, the moment when heaven and earth meet through obedience. It's not just about the union of two people, it's about the completion of an assignment, the closing of one chapter and the birth of another. As written in the book of Isaiah, chapter 62, verse 3, you will be a crown of splendor in the top Lord's hand, a royal diadem in the hand of your God. You, chosen one, have become that crown. Every delay shaped your edges, every tear polished your light. What once felt like breaking was actually crafting. Heaven has been forming a masterpiece, not a fleeting romance, but a reflection of divine glory. There was once a couple named Ari and Solène. Their journey was not perfect, it was sacred. They met when both had already been refined by solitude and molded by purpose. On their wedding day, there were no extravagant displays, only worship and quiet joy. As they stood before God, they felt something powerful, a stillness that said, this is what the waiting was for. Afterward, Ari told a friend, it wasn't the vows that made me cry, it was remembering who I became to be ready for them. That's what the crowning moment does. It reminds you that love was never the reward, transformation was. Your own crowning may not happen in front of an altar. It might unfold in your spirit long before. It's the instant you realize that what God promised wasn't just a person, but peace. The person simply becomes the evidence of what peace can produce. You've reached the part of the story where purpose and promise hold hands. Every season before this one revelation, refinement, warfare was rehearsal for this harmony. Imagine standing in a grand cathedral filled with candles. Each flame represents a prayer you once prayed. As you step inside, you notice the light shimmering off the walls. Reflecting thousands of times over, you suddenly realize that every small prayer, every whispered, "Why?" was heard. Heaven didn't ignore you, it collected you. And now, all those flames are burning together in the same room as your fulfillment. If this message resonates deep within your spirit, if something in you whispers, "Yes, I feel this unfolding," then you already know what it means to stand in that sacred space of arrival. And as this word meets you, let me offer something gentle. If your heart feels stirred to respond, to keep this light alive for others walking behind you, there are simple ways to do it, ways that don't demand, only invite. You can. Like this message, it's like lighting one more candle in that cathedral, making the glow a little brighter for the next soul to see. You can. Share it. Like opening a window so the fragrance of hope can drift into another weary room. Someone is waiting for a reminder that God still writes beautiful endings. You can. Subscribe. Not as a follower of a voice, but as a keeper of a flame. Each new message is another spark in your journey, a reminder that heaven is still speaking. And if your spirit feels gently led to donate, see it not as obligation, but as offering. Think of it as adding oil to the lamp fuel that keeps the light steady for those still finding their way through night. Your giving is worship when it's born from gratitude. It's not buying a blessing, it's saying, "Thank you, Lord, for mine." And when you finish reading, if this message touched something deep inside, leave a simple comment, perhaps just one word that captures what you feel. Grateful. Ready. Home. Those quiet words become petals falling on the altar. Small offerings that let heaven know the message reached your heart. You are now walking in the glow of fulfillment. But fulfillment is never meant to end with you. It's meant to flow through you. Let your life, your story, your generosity become part of the same current that once carried you here. When Ari and Solen looked back, they realized their union wasn't the finish line, it was the altar from which new purposes were born. That's how every divine promise ends, not with a period, but with an open door. So, as your own crown settles upon your spirit, stand still for a moment. Feel its weight. It's not heavy, it's holy. It carries every lesson, every scar, every answered prayer. And as you breathe beneath it, whisper softly, "To God be the glory." Because the crown was never about status, it was always about surrender. Once the covenant is sealed, heaven doesn't stop, it expands. Love that began between two hearts begins to flow outward like a river, touching everything around it. What God joins never stays small. It grows, multiplies, and transforms environments. You and your partner become instruments of purpose, walking embodiments of redemption. The book of Joshua, chapter 24, verse 15, declares, "But as for me and my house, we will serve the Lord." Those words aren't merely a declaration, they are a blueprint. Divine love always builds something bigger than itself. When two souls align under heaven, They become a foundation upon which God writes stories of renewal. The purpose of your union is unfolding now. It may not look grand at first. It may begin with quiet acts of faithfulness, praying together, encouraging each other, serving your community. But those small actions send ripples across generations. The echo of obedience is never short-lived. It travels far beyond the present moment. There was once a couple, Rule and Sarah, who had both come from broken family lines. They carried the weight of generations, divorce, mistrust, abandonment. When God brought them together, they realized their marriage wasn't just for them, it was for healing their bloodline. They decided to become what their ancestors never had, a home rooted in prayer. Every night, they would light a candle on their table and thank God aloud, not for what they owned, but for what He was restoring. Their house, though simple, became a sanctuary. People who entered could feel peace before a word was spoken. That's what divine purpose does. It changes the atmosphere. Your covenant will do the same. It will repair what was broken before you, and it will plant strength into those who come after. You'll see God's fingerprints in the way your love teaches forgiveness, patience, and consistency to those who've forgotten such things exist. Purpose unfolds slowly but powerfully. One day you'll notice how your shared prayers have become protection for others, how your home has become a place where weary hearts find rest. It's the natural fruit of love. Guided by heaven, it overflows. Imagine your relationship as a tree. The roots represent your private devotion, the trunk, your shared strength, and the branches, your purpose. The fruit that grows is not for you alone, it's for others to taste and see that the Lord is good. A divine partnership doesn't just survive, it feeds nations in quiet ways. Ruel once said, "We didn't build a ministry, we became one." That is the essence of divine purpose. It doesn't always need a stage or a microphone. Sometimes it's found in how you speak to each other, how you forgive quickly, how you keep faith alive in ordinary days. Heaven calls that ministry. Through your covenant, God will start movements you may never witness fully. A child watching your patience may learn what true love looks like. A friend witnessing your endurance may rediscover faith. Someone reading your testimony may decide to believe again. You are sowing in unseen soil, and eternity keeps the harvest. Divine love also becomes a mirror to the world. When people look at you and your partner, they see not perfection, but redemption. They see two people once broken, now whole, walking as living proof that God restores what time tried to erase. Sometimes, your purpose will lead you into new assignments, mentorship, service, creative projects, ministry together. Other times, it will call you simply to be still and radiate peace wherever you go. Both are equally holy. Purpose-filled love is never loud, but it is luminous. It doesn't need to prove itself, it just is. Like sunlight through a window, it warms without demanding attention. This season of walking together will teach you that every miracle must mature into ministry. You'll find that loving each other well is the greatest sermon you could ever preach. The journey won't be without challenges, but the perspective has changed. What once felt like trials now feels like training. The same grace that united you continues to sustain you. And through it all, God smiles not because He finally gave you what you wanted, but because He sees you becoming what He intended. Your covenant is a seed in His garden of eternity. It will keep bearing fruit long after you've finished your earthly assignment. Others will eat from it, live from it, and thank God for a love that carried his fingerprints. So, walk forward gently, yet boldly. The purpose unfolding before you isn't a task, it's a rhythm. Every day you choose faithfulness. Every prayer you whisper together. Every act of kindness you sow, it all becomes worship. Because in the end, divine love doesn't just unite two people, it redeems whole generations. And that chosen one is the quiet miracle God had in mind all along. When you finally reach the place where everything has come full circle, there is a silence that feels sacred. It's not the silence of absence, it's the silence of completion. Heaven pauses, and you can almost sense creation exhale around you. Every thread of your story, once tangled with pain and confusion, now weaves together into something radiant. The Book of Revelation, chapter 3, verse 8 reminds us, "I have set before you an open door, which no one can shut." Anu, that's where you stand now, before the open door. Behind you lies the wilderness. Ahead of you, the promise fulfilled. You have walked through revelation, preparation, warfare, healing, and alignment. You have learned to wait, to discern, to pray, and to trust. And now, you carry a peace that cannot be shaken, because it was forged in fire. But this final chapter is not really an ending. It's the unveiling of purpose through memory. Looking back, you can see how divine precision guided every turn. What once felt like delay now looks like design. The unanswered prayers, the long nights, the tears, they all served as ingredients in the recipe of destiny. There was once a chosen one named Eliora, who, after many years of waiting and refining, finally stepped into her promised season. One evening, sitting beside her husband beneath a starlit sky, she whispered, "Do you remember when we thought God was silent?" He smiled, looking up at the constellations. He wasn't silent, he said. He was speaking in stars. That moment captured the truth of every chosen heart's journey. God never forgets his promises. He fulfills them in the most poetic way. What once felt random now glows with meaning. Every trial had a lesson. Every wound carried wisdom. Every silence held a song. Now, when you think of all you've been through, you no longer feel the sting, you feel reverence. The pain became purpose. The waiting became worship. And the outcome became testimony. You understand now that heaven's timing was never late. It was precise. You see the beauty in the in-between, the way God wrote redemption into chapters that once seemed ruined. You begin to notice how even the detours were divine. How the heartbreak softened you enough to recognize true love when it finally appeared. Fulfillment, in heaven's language, is not just receiving what was promised, it's becoming what was prophesied. You are no longer merely a recipient of grace, you are a reflection of it. Imagine standing at the top of a mountain you once prayed to climb. As you look down, the valleys no longer look threatening, they look necessary. The cliffs that terrified you now mark the path that led you upward. You realize that the view could only exist because you didn't quit when it was dark. That is the eternal echo, the understanding that destiny doesn't end when the promise arrives. It continues through the legacy it leaves. What God did in you will ripple through others. Your story becomes a key unlocking faith in hearts still waiting for their own dawn. Eliora later said, "Our love didn't save us. It revealed how saved we already were." And that is the mystery of divine union. It doesn't replace God's presence, it reveals it more clearly. You finally understand that love, at its highest form, is worship. This awareness will stay with you. It will shape how you live, how you speak, how you serve. You'll find yourself gentler with others, still waiting, because you remember the ache of not yet. You'll pray for them differently, not as someone superior, but as someone who understands. Your fulfillment becomes intercession. Your peace becomes invitation. The same hand that once reached out in desperation now reaches out in compassion. And maybe that's the true ending of every chosen story. It ends in empathy. You no longer seek signs, you become one. You no longer chase confirmation, you carry it. You are the living proof that God still fulfills, still restores, still aligns. As time passes, your gratitude will grow deeper. You'll wake up beside the answer to your prayers and whisper, "Lord, you've been faithful." But even then, your heart will know it was never just about finding someone. It was about finding him in the process. The eternal echo is this: every chosen one becomes both story and storyteller. Your life preaches what your lips could never fully explain. You walk through days glowing with quiet purpose, carrying the evidence that divine love is not a myth, it's a mission. So when others ask how you knew, how you held on, how you believed, you'll simply smile and say, "Because he never stopped writing." No, and somewhere in heaven, the author will nod, ink still wet on the final page, not because the story ended, but because through you, it continues. This is where the story pauses, not ends. You have walked through revelation, waiting, testing, healing, and fulfillment, and now the circle closes in peace. Every word you've heard, every whisper that stirred your heart, has been part of heaven's way of saying, you are seen, you are chosen, you are ready. Take a breath. Let gratitude settle into your chest. You've journeyed far, and grace has followed you every step. What was once uncertainty is now clarity. What once felt like delay has become design. If this message has spoken to something deep within you, if it has reminded you that divine timing still lives, that love still blooms in its season, let that feeling flow outward. You can, like this message as an act of light, as if adding one more star to the night sky for someone else to follow. You can share it, as gently as releasing a paper lantern into the air, letting its glow find another searching soul who needs hope as much as you once did. You can subscribe, not from habit, but from hunger to stay connected to the voice that reminds you heaven still writes through ordinary hearts. And if your spirit feels led to donate, think of it as planting a tree in this garden of grace. Every seed keeps the message alive, offering shade and comfort to someone who hasn't yet found their way home. When you finish reading, leave a comment, one word that reflects your heart in this moment: peace, faith, grateful, alive. These small echoes become petals of worship that rise higher than algorithms ever could. The journey continues through you. Go, radiant soul, carry the light forward.